Go. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. My principal sheikh was Sheikh Nazim. We followed him with Nabil. Hadi knew about it. And he always started his talks asking for medad. You know what that medad? Medad ya Sidi. In other words, give me something inspirational. Send me something new. If you do a talk properly, you learn something from your own talk. Si on le fait bien, on apprend de notre propre discours. Ouais, non, mais c'est pour les francophones. So, it's interesting in that level. On the other hand, I found that the people who just wait for inspiration and have nothing prepared, it ends up being somewhat boring, monotonous, similar every time. So I've tried to come to some kind of compromise between preparation and spontaneous inspiration. Okay, so we are gathered here tonight to celebrate, it's a strange word, but arriving at 70 years old. Okay? We have two people, I think, older than me in the audience. I won't name them. It's not Andreas and it's not Manira. It's not Sarah. Okay, so what?
It's Hadi's birthday and your birthday.
And it's Hadi's birthday also. But he's at the younger end of the spectrum. So what I tell my children and other people who will listen is that life is approximately, in Canada, used to be a lot shorter, now about 80 years. 79 for men, 82, 83 for women. So you can divide your life into 4 quartiles, like 4 quarters of a football game. I'm not sure how it works with soccer, but football you have 4 quarters, each being 20 years. So when you arrive at 70, you're in the 4th quartile, in the 4th quarter, coming into the second half of the 4th quarter. Not much longer to go. And we have someone who's beyond the 4th quarter, but nowadays people can go into overtime. People go overtime into 90, 95, even 100. Leonard Cohen had a Zen teacher who died at 104, and he was giving sessions in Zen Buddhism up till about 100. Okay, so some people go longer than others. But 70 years is about the time that it takes to begin to understand what it's all about. Now, in the old days, they said 40. In the days of the Old Testament and the Quran, it said that 40 was the age of wisdom. Bawa, who was one of my teachers, forbid us to have a beard before 40 years old. It was the only time in my life when I followed him for a year and a half, that I didn't have a beard. From 18 I have this beard. Because he forbid us. Do you understand English a little bit? Yeah, okay. And if anyone needs a translation, ask me. And so for a year and a half while I followed him, I was still in my 30s, I didn't have a beard. Why? Because he said, if you have a beard, you look wise, but if you're under 40, you can't be wise. So you're under false pretenses. Okay, the modern day hipsters, would disagree. Yes?
I'm wise and I don't.
No, okay, this was... Okay, this was the paternalistic society, patriarchal society. Okay. The other statistics, okay, 80 years old. So I went on the internet for a search to see, because especially my eldest daughter is concerned about my life expectancy. So if you arrive, this is statistical, we have an accountant with us, maybe we don't have any actuaries? No. I mean, no actuaries. Do you have friends who are actuaries? No. If you arrive at 70 in Canada, your life expectancy is not 80 anymore, it's 86. I don't know what it is if you arrive at 80, I didn't look it up. But if you arrive at 70, the normal average life expectancy is 86. So statistically speaking, I have 16 more years. But Allah, as we know, can take us tomorrow or later than that. But statistically speaking, on average, 15, 16 years to go. And so there's still stuff to be done. And I feel it very much. At times I feel like it's over, and other times I feel like I'm just getting started. Because I think à cet âge-ci, je comprends bien des affaires que j'ai pas compris pendant longtemps. Évidemment, c'est cumulatif, mais il y a plein de choses que je comprenais pas avant que là, je comprends. Par exemple, just un petit exemple, I have understood, took me a long time, Munir is partly responsible, so is the Arab world, to learn about adab, that you don't just say the brutal, honest truth a la Trump and just throw it out at people, that you have to have some diplomacy and courtesy and gentleness. It took me a long time to learn that. I didn't learn that in my family. In some families they do. In my family it was just tell it like it is. That's the American way, I guess. Or maybe the Jewish way. Just say it the way it is. When I used to go to London to visit my in-laws, my mother-in-law, may her soul rest in peace, would sometimes get offended by not so much by what I said, but how I said it, and I came across as a discourteous, impolite American boor, I guess. Because in England, they like things proper. Like in Arab countries, they call it adab, proper behavior. We didn't grow up with proper behavior. If any of you ever saw a Woody Allen film, where he goes to this Catholic house of Diane Keaton, was it Manhattan, the film? I think that was the one. And he goes to the house and everyone is doing things very politely. It's perfectly Catholic. Everyone, their forks are in the right place and their knives are in the right place. And he's seeing in his vision, has anyone seen this film? Yeah. No, yeah. And in his vision, in his mind, he's seeing his own family and everyone is shouting louder than the other one. No, you're not right. That's not the way it is. How can you possibly say that? That was the dinners at his house. The dinners at my house were a bit like that also. But then there are other environments where everyone is prim and proper, and there's something to be said for them. So, I have to remember to look at the camera. When I was thinking about this, what could I say that could actually, not just to talk, but to have some impact, so that you gain something, people gain something from the talk? I figured that there was 3 subjects I wanted to cover today. And oddly enough, I'm listening to a tape of Hamza Yusuf today, talking about a great Sufi saint and scholar named Ahmed Zarruq. And he says, in his talk, he says the exact same thing I had come to about this talk. He says, if you want to heal yourself, cure yourself, you need to remember 3 things. Okay? The first subject is life. That in Arabic, this is ghurba. Ghurba, gharib, that you're a stranger in this world. We all think this is our place, but this is a temporary abode. You have to acknowledge that you are here temporarily. This is not your homeland. This is not your permanent abode. Life. Number 1. I beg your pardon?
Because you're gonna die.
Yes. 100% possibility. The second thing you should remember is the struggle. He called it a struggle. We might call it even in English the agony of death, the death process. We'll talk about that shortly. And the third thing you should remember is, anyone want to hazard a guess? The third thing you should remember is you're going to meet with your Lord. Okay? That you're going to, whether you like it or not, you're going to see God. Now I know this is hard for atheists. They can try to translate it into, I don't know, take account of your life, see the universe, but you're going to have a meeting with your Lord after you pass on. So those are three things to think about. What is life? What is the process of death? What happens after death? Pretty fundamental. Okay? Anyone want to disagree? No. So let's start with life. What is life? And let's start with what life isn't. Okay? Est-ce que tu es capable de suivre? Ça va? Comme ci, comme ça? Ok. Oui. Qu'est-ce que c'est la vie? Et qu'est-ce que c'est pas la vie? Okay, that's part of it. Now, we're taught a whole bunch of, I'll go back to my roots here, we're taught a whole bunch of BS, I won't say the full word, about what life is. If you watch the television, for example, and the advertisements, life is about having fun. Life is about enjoying yourself. Life is about, even more than spending money, life is about saving money. I had a recent kind of unpleasant encounter with a Sufi friend who will remain unnamed that I visited in upstate New York. He's been practicing Sufism his whole life, and he spent the first hour that we were together showing me all the bargains he got in the renovation of his house. How he got this sink for $20, it's normally worth $100, and this faucet for $50, it's normally $250. And I looked at him and I got upset and inspired at the same time. I won't name him, but I said, Ahmed, there's no special price in heaven for people who get the best price. No special rewards for getting bargains. But there are people, honestly, and I can, even into their late years, that their whole life is based on getting bargains. Because this is what the media is serving to people. Okay? It's right out there, all the time. Nor is life about financial planning and retirement planning. So life should be about post-life planning, not about retirement planning. But that's another thing that they teach us. And about degrees of university, and about succeeding materially, socially. This is what we're taught. We live in a secular society. This is what they teach us life is about. And if you follow any of those paths, you will end up actually, amongst other things, forget about you end up being depressed. I just saw a lady last week in therapy. She had everything planned in her life. Her husband was an accountant, successful one. She was a school principal. And she said, I don't know, now she's about the same age as me, maybe 69. And she said, I don't know, I'm depressed. And I said to her, of course. Let's call her Louise. Of course. She said, what do you mean? I said, everything you have no vision of the afterlife. You have, at this point, you have no, you're just concerned with the world. The world always disappoints you. Sooner or later, this world will disappoint you. C'est garanti. The Sufis, all the spiritual paths talk about this. The Hindus call it Maya, the Muslims and Sufis call it Dunya, the Buddhists have another name for it. Everyone has a name for the deception, the disappointment of this material world. So what, and we can talk about this, but so what is life really about? And here I'm going to draw mostly on the the near-death experiences. What do the people who have near-death experiences, what do they conclude about the purpose of life? Okay. These are people who died, had heart attacks, car accidents, were declared dead, and then came back. What did they see? What did they think after their experience of almost dying? And if you put it all together, if you synthesize it, il y a trois choses. Il y a trois choses. Three things they say life is about. Number one. Anyone want to guess?
Love.
Love. Good.
I read the book.
Yeah. Love. But not, love is nice. Love, but not the kind of romantic love that you see in Hollywood films. Not the kind of love that represents an infatuation with an individual person, but more, it's more like compassion, loving kindness, universal love. When I met my first Muslim Sufi teacher, he talked to me. I listened very politely to his talk. Okay. Mon premier maître Sufi musulman. Puis, j'ai sorti de son zawiya. I left his zawiya, his little ashram, if you want, and I walked up the Mount of Olives. It was in Jerusalem. And suddenly I got filled with this kind of divine love for everything. Not for any individual nation, not for any place, not for any individual person, for all of creation. This was in Jerusalem, a battleground for thousands of years. I had love for Christians, for Jews, for Muslims, for atheists, for animals, for rocks, for forests, everything. Universal love. That's number one that we want to learn. And this, in interaction with people, this includes, the Buddhists translated into loving kindness, compassion, caring, all of these things. Number two, you read the book? Learn knowledge. Okay? But not superficial knowledge, deep knowledge. Okay? Not the knowledge that allows you to know what the baseball, like in my school we had people who knew the ERAs of every baseball player, or the football statistics, or 100 other irrelevant things. Even all the different, like some of the people who like taxonomy and classifying every single insect and animal and reptile. You know, okay, if that's your mission to be a botanist, a zoologist, it's okay, but not that kind. The deeper knowledge. What is the deepest knowledge of all knowledges? What? Meaning of life is connected. Pretty good.
Knowledge of God.
Knowledge of God. This is the deepest knowledge, and the most difficult one. The Arabs and the Sufis call it marifat, the real knowledge. This is different from ilm, which is kind of, outward knowledge, inner knowledge of God. And thirdly, so this everyone should at least take home from here, the purpose of life is three: love, knowledge, and No, Iman is probably part of love. Iman is part of love, I would think. Mission. We're all here for a purpose.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And sometimes they call it vocation. And the purposes can be very, very different. The purpose can be taking care of the pigeons in your courtyard. That can be your purpose. Yeah, you like the dog story, eh? Yeah. There's a beautiful story, Sufi story. In the time of Junaid al-Baghdadi, there was a lady in the market. And we all know people like this somewhere. Very nasty, difficult lady. Always cursing people and saying foul language and angry and shouting. and then she died. And one of the murids of this great sheikh, Sheikh al-Baghdadi, he saw her in a dream and she was in paradise. He said, this is impossible. How could this lady be in paradise? And so he went to the sheikh, who was very illuminated, had access to kashf, and he said to the sheikh, how did this happen? And the sheikh knew. He asked Allah, and he knew. He said, one year, this lady was in the marketplace, and there was a dog that was very sick, and it was shivering, like shivering to death. And this lady took off her coat and covered the dog with the coat. And then the dog died. For this act alone, she was sent to paradise. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So, we all have missions. Mission can be teacher. Mission can be taking care of children, taking care of patients, taking care of clients, taking care of the mosque, taking care of the church. We're here for a purpose. And many of these NDE people are sent back to finish their mission. This is an old story. Many, many years ago, I had a patient at the Royal Vic. I remember she was very, very depressed. And she had had an abortion, and she had a near-death experience, and she was sent back to take care of her other daughter, who was 15 years old. And when she told the doctors and the nurses about her experience, they all laughed at her. They said, you're psychotic. You were just crazy. Forget that experience. But she knew she wasn't. And she was taking lots of antidepressants and nothing was working. So she came to see me. I was very young at the time. I was just doing my residency. And she told me about her experience. I said, oh yeah, there are other people who had this. A very interesting experience. You have to learn from it. It's telling you something important about life. From the moment she was acknowledged, the antidepressants started working. And she started getting better. She also got all the side effects. So I knew it was really working. But before that, because people had been denying her experience, nothing was happening. And she was remaining in her depression state. That just came back to me. I remember. So it's important to acknowledge these things. Okay? So when I think about this, an old song, oh, Paul, what's his name? Didn't make it, Tom. What? Question. Oui, ok. Je peux le dire en français. How do you know? Oh, okay. You have to come to our workshops. This is, it's a process, most of the things. It's an important question, but there's not a simple answer. It requires a kind of opening of the heart, an opening of the mind, intuition, communication with God on various levels, looking around. This is a subject for a whole other talk.
The next 50 years of your life.
Yeah. Okay. So, before we go further, from all of this, I was looking for Tom. He was supposed to accompany me. I remembered, and this is somewhat the way I put it all together in a song. I'm not a particularly talented musician. My daughters will tell you. In my family, on my mother's side, they were all talented musicians. My aunt, my cousins, they have perfect pitch. My mother was a good musician, and her sister started the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. I mean, she was really extraordinary. On my father's side, they were all tone deaf. But he loved music, but he was tone deaf. He pouvait pas chanter. We would sing Happy Birthday, and my aunt would go crazy because most of us were out of tune. And she had perfect pitch, and she would have a fit. You know, what's going on here? But nevertheless, my father liked music, and sometimes, if the songs are simple, you know, I can remember the tunes. If they get complex, then it's coming. This one comes from Pir Vilayat with a little bit of editing, a little bit of addition on my part, but I thought this is beautiful, and this is where I came to in the process of thinking about life. And every time I did a retreat, and I've done many, a spiritual retreat, this song came back to me. At some point I'd feel like I had to sing it. It goes like this. Night and day, I seek for thee night and day. Night and day, I search for thee night and day. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. By land and sea, sea and air, looking for thy holy face. Land and sea, sea and air, looking for thy holy face. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. Guides and saints, peers and sheikhs, speaking of thy holy names. Guides and saints, peers and sheikhs, speaking of thy holy names. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. Night and day, I search for thee night and day. Night and day, I search for thee night and day. O Lord of my heart, open up thy gates for me. Okay.
Very, very peaceful and
Yeah.
calming. Very calming.
Pir,
Nice.
thank you, Pir Vilayat taught us that, and he meant it. He was a seeker also, and you struggle, you try to get to the openings, fatah, in Arabic, and we try to get there, and sometimes it opens and often it doesn't. In the same spirit, there's a lot of things to say. In the same spirit, how are we doing for time? Anyone time in? Really? Okay. It's been 30 minutes already. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Over the last year, I've heard 4 similar stories. Oddly enough, all these stories are from Morocco. Okay? Stories of people dying. 3 were fathers of patients of mine or of husbands of patients of mine. 4 were from fathers. The last story was a story of a Jewish lady. But this week, alhamdulillah, Allah sent me one of them, so I wanted to give me the story. I find this inspiring and uplifting. So this is a Moroccan man in his late 70s, I think, approximately, who's been diagnosed with esophageal cancer. Il fait un cancer, l'esophage. Et les médecins disent, il n'y a rien à faire. Au moment donné, il fait une crise et on l'amène à l'hôpital. Il y a la grosse fièvre. on essaie de le nourrir, ça marche plus ou moins, et on l'envoie à la maison pour mourir. Okay? À la maison, il est alité. Okay? Il faut preface this by saying, this man he's a practicing pious Muslim, but he's not a big scholar. What did Sheikh Nazim call him? King-size scholar. He's not a king-size scholar. He's not an obvious Sufi participating in a tariqat. He's an ordinary practicing Muslim, but a faithful one. So he's dans le lit. He's more or less bedridden at this point in time. And he's still doing his prayers. In Islam, you can do your prayers even if you're bedridden. And he has his children bringing him water, or sometimes he does tayammum. And one time, I think maybe it's Fajr, he's sleeping, his son doesn't want to wake him up. So when he finally gets up, he was upset. Why didn't you wake me up? Okay. I missed my prayer. Why didn't you wake me up? After that, he did his prayer a few times on his own because he was mad at the son. So all the time, he's in his bed, and he's doing a practice that we do in Islam after each prayer. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Wallahu Akbar, 33 times. This is something every Muslim does after their prayer, and then Ashhadu an la, then the testimony of faith, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an. So this is what he's doing. This is his routine. Occasionally, he can sip a little water, a little bit of liquid. That's all he can eat because it's all blocked. And then comes the time that he can't breathe anymore. So his son goes out to get a respirator, and while he goes out, he gets a call from the daughter saying that our father has died. So he rushes back home, and he finds his father in the bed, a big smile on his face. He said, comme si il était soulagé de sa douleur. The pain is all gone. Big smile on his face. And he noticed the son, and it's not the only report like that, il avait des plaies de lit. He had bed sores. He'd been in bed all this time. They plaies de lit dispares. Left. And he had eczema on his ankles. Maybe this is another dermatology problem. Eczema, maybe with psoriasis on his ankle. Gone. And his skin, everything looked very soft, like a baby. And gradually, over the next 16 hours before they buried him, there was an odor of musk. It was his favorite perfume, musqué, musk. But they hadn't put it on him for quite a while. But then his body started. The next day, one of his sons flew in to Morocco, and he still had the big smile on his face, all the way to the burial ground. This is not the only story, many stories. Now, the doubters, I told this to, I won't mention her name, our friend from England, who said, oh yeah, the Pakistanis, they have all these stories. But